Is there too much noise around AI? Let's find out with today's special guest.
Welcome to the Artificial Intelligence Podcast, where we make AI simple, practical, and accessible for small business owners and leaders. Forget the complicated tech talk or expensive consultants. This is where you'll learn how to implement AI strategies that are easy to understand and can make a big impact for your business. The Artificial Intelligence Podcast is brought to you by Fraction AIO, the trusted partner for AI digital transformation. At Fraction AIO, we help small and medium-sized businesses boost revenue by eliminating time-wasting, non-revenue generating tasks that frustrate your team. With our custom AI bots, tools, and automations, we make it easy to shift your team's focus to the tasks that matter most, driving growth and results. We guide you through a smooth, seamless transition to AI, ensuring you avoid costly mistakes and invest in the tools that truly deliver value. Don't get left behind. Let Fraction AIO help you stay ahead in today's AI-driven world. Learn more and get started at fractionaio.com.
I'm really interested, Fadi, in your perspective as someone who's been in the education world and now you've started doing more work with businesses, startups, and consulting. There's been a lot of challenges where the definition of AI has changed dramatically. When I was a child, an artificial intelligence was a sentient machine. And now we're using AI to describe things like smart word processors, image generators, spell checkers, simple automations. What has really happened to the definition of AI? And what can the academic world do to kind of solidify what AI actually means? Because first it was AI, then it was strong versus weak AI. Now we're saying AI has become AGI. All these words keep changing. How can people really know what we mean?
Okay, Jonathan, first of all, I guess thank you for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. It's a great opportunity and an honor to be joining as a cast member and join and hopefully have your listeners take my perspective, my 2 cents, I guess, for what it's worth. I think just for entertainment purposes, I'll take you back to the late 80s, early 90s when I was actually going to NC State University here in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I was majoring in computer engineering. So we're talking about like hardcore engineering. There's like microprocessor design, and I minored in robotics and artificial intelligence. We know that the artificial intelligence has been around since the 50s. That's what we always say. In the late 80s, early 90s, we were working with neural network. There's some expert systems were really big. And we were also doing a lot of fuzzy logic, which disappeared. I think it's a discipline. It's no longer around. But a lot of neural networks, which we see a lot of today, especially like ChatGPT and the like. So over the 30 years of my career, I would say I joined consulting, joined Anderson Consulting, which is Accenture now, or has become Accenture. And between 11, 12 years, I've also joined Clarkston and so on, of working domestically. And then the remaining, I would say 18 years working internationally in different roles. My focus has been predominantly on automation and digital. So there's some shape or form of AI throughout the work that we did. People always threw around, oh, this is AI and this is this. And the definition of AI changes. It really depends on the way that you look at what is artificial intelligence. Is it automation? Is it just simply having a program like an expert system? That is artificial intelligence at the end of the day. But I think to answer your question, as we've moved forward, I would say over the past 30 years, the introduction of ChatGPT was really the major inflection point. And the way that I like to describe it, I can't remember where I read this, but if you remember in the early 90s, Netscape, if you remember the browser, gave us access, into the internet. And then it just exploded from there because all of a sudden it became user-friendly. We talked about the internet, and it was DARPA, and it was UC Berkeley, and like all these universities, but it was more in academia and defense, but it was not widely available. Then they gave us Netscape, and things changed because now the average user has access to it. Same thing happened, in my opinion, with ChatGPT. Those guys did a good job. They figured out how to give us an interface into AI, which did not exist before, and hence the explosion. Now, to answer your question, there's been many different definitions for AI throughout the years. More recently, since 2023, the introduction of ChatGPT, this thing has exploded because every person, every consumer, all of a sudden had access to this let's say, chatbot that's been trained on massive amounts of data. And they just started creating new concepts and new ideas about what AI is. But to me, the definition of AI, artificial intelligence, if you go back to the roots, is about if you talk to a machine, you don't know that's a machine, that's a human, could be a human. maybe that's what AI is. But in general, I think digital automation, AI, they get mixed and matched in conversations. I'll stop here and see if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the Turing test, which is the idea that it could be in another room and you don't realize you're talking
Right.
to the computer. And if that's the test, like, has it passed or not yet? We've had different types of online bots since the 90s that have been trying to convince you that they're real and to click a link. Right? Those have been around since the AOL days. So I guess the real question is for people who are trying to understand what all of these terms mean. Where is the line between where we are right now and what we thought of as AI 30 years ago with movies like Terminator and War Games? That's really where my initial idea of this is where
Sure.
is. And we seem to be in a different place now.
Yeah, I think my opinion is that we've crossed the threshold of the Turing test. I think we've passed it, like ChatGPT and similar, Grok, Gemini, like all these chatbots. Some of them are better than the others, and I'm not going to say which, in my opinion, but we've crossed that threshold. So if you think about the introduction of 4.0 of ChatGPT, it was interesting because that was our initial kind of introduction to agentic AI and the ability for more like sophisticated workflows. Because when you're talking to it, if you activate the voice mode or the audio, so you can converse with it, you're taking your voice, converting it to text, taking that text, putting it through the language model, the chat bot. It's coming up with an answer, and then it's converting it to text and then back to voice. So if you look at that, all of us, and then if we say the Turing test is that you got to go behind the screen where you don't see what you're interacting with, how many of us do you think today would know that we're interacting with a chatbot? Especially if you do prompt priming to not make it so polite. Because one of the things with ChatGPT is that it's super polite. But the reality is for people that are on the like inside track of AI, I always tell ChatGPT, drop the nice act and let's just get to the regular fast conversation. And there's no need to put the niceties around it. So I think we've crossed that threshold. The Sam Altman and team are pushing for AGI. Now, AGI is the concept of artificial general intelligence, where we're giving it beyond capabilities that are beyond just simply having multiple PhDs in so many different disciplines. And now we're beginning to trust it and give it more, I guess that's a bit also on the agentic side. We're beginning to give it more autonomy in being able to conduct transactions on our behalf. And to me, that's really the rub for, and another inflection point where we as humans start putting more trust into a machine to actually act on our behalf, have autonomy to even use our money to purchase some things or a ticket or whatever. That's where I think we're headed. I'm not particularly crazy about the idea, but that's where we're headed.
You brought up something really interesting there, which is how much do you really trust in AI? So many companies go, I want to use an AI chatbot for customer support. And I always ask the same question. I say, will you give it the power to initiate refunds? No, I would never. Right. And that means every person talking to that chatbot knows it can't actually solve their problem. And then I ask another question, which is, have you ever had a good experience with someone else's customer service chatbot? No one ever says yes, right? No one ever's ever had a good experience. So this core problem is one of trust, because their fear is, what if the AI goes rogue and refunds everyone and all our money is gone, right? And it's, well, if you don't trust it with your money, why should we trust it with their money? And I certainly understand that. I remember we've got through these different phases of what we're willing to do with money, right? First, it was even buying something online. There are many people who have never made an online transaction. A large number of people who would never purchase online. And then
Mind-boggling, but yeah.
for a long time, I was like, I'm someone who I'll buy through a computer, but not my phone. Only recently did I start doing transactions to my phone. And there are a lot of people now who they don't even bring out a credit card or money. The phone has their money in it, and they can do tap to pay and other different ways of using the phone as the core piece of their transaction, where the phone now controls all of their assets. So we are continuing to trust these tools more and more. How far away do you think we are from people actually the AI access or credit card? Because the question becomes, if there's a mistake, if there's a purchase with your credit card and it's just someone else in your house, like if one of my kids gets my credit card and buys something, that's not fraud. Like I
Correct.
still have to cover that because it's my fault. It's only if it's someone outside your household. So if the AI makes a bad purchase, where's the line of where you can refund? You're stuck or not stuck, right? They buy something with a no refund policy. Now, are you stuck with it? I think that's the question that has to be answered. And how far away do you think we are from that answer and from people actually trusting an AI to buy stuff for them without?
So yeah, yeah. So I think we're already there, Jonathan. I think that I'm on the fringes. I take a lot of risks as a person anyway, and as an entrepreneur, I guess more recently. But I would say I would trust an AI with my credit card as long as I understand how, like, what is it operating on, and I've actually validated any biases or problems that it might have. But you're absolutely correct. There's a trust bridge almost that you need to cross over. You cannot just blindly give any AI access to your credit card, but as a responsible, I guess, consumer or individual or intellectual, whatever, you need to make sure that you've got a piece of software that has been versioned and trained or whatever, and you've done enough testing on it that you feel comfortable to give it credit card access. I still think that you have to have certain stop measures or like certain gates to where you say any spend over $100, you have to come back to me. You cannot just simply. So I think that the technology is there. Now it's about the putting forth the effort as humans to figure out what are going to be these things. What are you comfortable with and what are you not comfortable with? My view as a business person and as an entrepreneur is that if you've given your AI your credit card, you've given it agency and you've given it authorization. So it's going to be a straightforward answer for me. There's like no refunds if your AI makes a mistake. That's you. I mean, again, that's just a business view, capitalistic view, if you will. But that becomes the consumer's responsibility because you've actually authorized that transaction.
Yeah, I think that you're right. So I posted something a while ago, a poll on LinkedIn, and I said, if you post something to Twitter that's offensive, and then you say, wait, ChatGPT wrote it, not me, are you no longer in trouble? Everyone except for one person said, no, it's still your fault. That one person is the one who's going to find out the hard way. To be the one person who lets the AI write something. And that's why I still believe it's critical to have that man in the middle moment where you're the final decision. The AI can set up the purchase, fill everything, and go, here's the order, this is the price. Should I do it? I think that for me, that's still where I'm at. And maybe we'll get to the point eventually where we have that security. There's also this element that AI is so exciting. We often see a ton of excitement, which causes a ton of security breaches. Like people don't pay as attention to security when they're excited. And you now have an AI that can be socially engineered. So it's a new way. The AI can be tricked out of your credit card because what to us as humans looks obviously like a fake website or something's wonky. AIs don't see website the same way. They just see the code. So they might not notice the same things, the same signals. So you have these new vectors that you have to be aware of. And that's one of the big challenges with AI and with these tools is that we're getting so excited so fast. I see this with a lot of companies. And we see a lot of companies, they give the chatbot too much information and then someone can ask a question the right way. We've even seen people socially engineer the main chatbots from OpenAI, where they've gotten it to reveal its core coding. We've seen it happen with several other of the major AIs where you ask a question the right way and it tells you all the things like it's the secret code name for the AI and its hierarchy of laws, Asimov's 3 laws, like its rules of this and then this and the different personalities. So even the most elite, the most expensive of AIs can be manipulated or tricked into saying different things. So I guess the real question for people, and this is can you have an AI that you have total control over? So if you're just using authentic version of ChatGPT, it's still connected to their servers. The knowledge goes into it. So now your credit card isn't just on your computer, it's now in their server. That's the first challenge. If you have something that's totally local, well, then it's a different challenge. It's more secure, but it's not as smart. And I think the direction of AI is moving towards smaller models. So I would rather have a model that's just inside my phone that works when I'm not connected to the internet. Because it's usually, I don't know about you, but when I most need it is when I don't have internet, when I'm lost or I'm in the woods. It feels like when you're in the woods, that's when you want to ask those questions. And if you have no signal, that's when you really want to know, how do I
If the
find
snake light
water?
turns red, is that a problem?
Yeah, exactly. And a smaller model can be super useful for that. And so we're seeing some real cool things with the smaller models. I think that's the direction we're actually going to shift towards, because we've seen these huge models that are hundreds of terabytes or gigabytes. You need like 55 graphics cards to run. And while those are cool, they know so many things. And this kind of leads to this other question I wanted to ask you, which was, whenever they release a new AI, they release these graphs to show how much smarter it is than every other AI. And there's two types of graphs. The first is when they just compare it to their own models. They go, this is the new ChatGPT. Yours is much better than the old ChatGPT. You go, oh, there's a reason they're not showing the other companies. It's not whatever Google has or whatever the other
Right.
Anthropic has, right? Or they show this is us versus Anthropic. And it's always, the scales are always, here's how good is it taking the LSAT. Here's how good is it taking the GMAT. And it's like, very rarely do I have a physics-based emergency. Like, I study trigonometry. I've never had a triangle in my life.
Sure.
Do I use trigonometry? It's actually massively, most of how I program is based on algebra. Like, when I'm designing AI prompts and most of my work, it's all based on algebra, which I never thought I would use. And it's like how I solve problems. A times B equals C. If I know A and C, I can solve for B. That's how I do most of my work. But these tests we see and have these massive databases of stuff that's almost never comes up. I don't really need the entire history of philosophy in my phone. There's a certain amount of data, like I can medical stuff, maybe survival stuff. Although the things that are useful are actually really small compared to the entire history of human knowledge. So we build these really big models, but very rarely do we use any particular part. So I probably use a small like pie of that. And maybe you use a different sector because you have different expertise. But if you start to realize just the part you need, then you could probably fit that in a smaller model.
Yeah.
And I don't need physics. I don't need philosophy. There's probably a lot of other categories I don't need. So that allows you to get a smaller model that becomes remotely. And I think that is what
It's a very good question, Jonathan. It's funny actually that you were mentioning this, because I was having a conversation with a buddy of mine, actually. I can't remember if it was like a gentleman from Google or actual somebody else in industry, but we were talking about language models. No, actually it was a founder of a startup. He was working on a smaller language model that run on the phone for a particular reason, similar to the things that you have raised. I don't know, I've been around for a while, and I can tell you that I found that extremes on either end don't really materialize. Usually the answer is somewhere in the middle. So what I think we're going to see is we're going to see a hybrid approach where you'll have, I don't know, that's just this opinion. I just came up with it here, like on the spot, just thinking through what you were saying. You're going to see some stuff happening on your phone, but then you're going to tap into a larger model that's running in the cloud. And I think developers are going to leverage both so that you have, and I think maybe some of the earlier conversation we're having around payment could be relegated, or could be actually, you specify that you only run this on the model that's on the phone, that is smaller, concise, that I trust fully, versus anything that's happening on the cloud. Potentially this evolution of a hybrid model as we start getting more and more sophisticated solutions out there. But one thing I wanted to just go back to the beginning of your conversation around customer agent bots not being that good. I don't know if you had a chance to look at I don't want to name, I was looking through I don't want to give any names, but you can just like Google search or ChatGPT or whatever your preferred chat bot to see what are the latest emerging voice chat bots that are out there. Some of my buddies have actually told me in the past, I think within the last couple of months, I got 2 or 3 calls from buddies of mine. They say, I think I just talked to a bot, and they spent like 25 minutes on the phone and they couldn't tell. And they finally just hung up when they realized that they might be talking to a bot. Jonathan, one of them was a job interview. The guy was just like, he was on the phone with I guess it was a bot, but he was on the phone for 20, 25 minutes. And then he started getting weird questions, and he's like, wait a minute, that's not my area of expertise. It says that clearly on my resume. And there was like a 15-second pause, which is abnormal for a human. And then the voice came back and said, why don't you tell me what your area of expertise is? Right. And it's like, wait a minute, you said that you have your resume in front, my resume in front of you. So it's just and this is good for people, for listeners of your show, is that you really have to, I think what I've realized we used to get these fraud tax calls in the US where they're saying, this is the IRS, go to Walgreens or Walmart and give me a gift card and all that. That happened to me personally. And since then, and it's definitely becoming more and more important now. As a consumer, you have to be vigilant now to the first question you ask yourself, am I talking to a bot? Am I being manipulated? Is this video on YouTube real? Or is it just made up by faceless marketing is what we're talking about? So we're definitely headed for some really interesting times. And the amount, what was the statistic that I quoted for my last class? I think 90% of the internet data was generated the last 2 years. So if you remember the amount, you've been around and you know how much data has been generated since the 90s. And we say every 2-3 years, the data is doubling or quadrupling or whatever. Now they're saying 90% of the internet's data is only in the last 2 years. That's massive. Last 2 years, we're talking about 2023, Jonathan. It's about 2022. That's not very long ago. And that is only going to accelerate, which means we're going to reach to a certain convergence where the amount of internet data that you're generating is 100% every year, if not more, that is actually out there and bots are getting trained on it. So I just think to kind of highlight the points, chatbots are definitely getting much, much more intelligent. They're passing the Turing test for sure. And I believe that customer service agents, I don't know whether I think companies should disclose that you're talking to a bot before you talk to it. I think there's experiments that are actually happening right now where I know from friends of mine that have had the experience of they're convinced that they were talking to a bot. So we're definitely there. And then the last point about the things that about our discussion is that I think we're going to see a hybrid of this LLM, or this large language model, something on your phone and then something in the cloud. Because I think I never thought I put my data in the cloud. Did you? Did you ever think all of your data is going to be on the Google network or Apple's iCloud? We never thought that. If you said that in the early 90s, I'd tell you you're insane. But guess what? All my data is out there now.
I think the hybrid model idea makes a lot of sense, which is that my AI grabs what it knows I need the most. As the more it talks to me, the more it knows the type of questions I asked. And then when it needs something else, it can grab it from the cloud or from the internet. That makes a lot of sense. I think that probably is the right answer, because here's what I've noticed, no matter how smart our phone get, we somehow end up with apps that use up all of the memory. No matter how much you have. And
That's true.
my first cell phone I had a pager, and then you had a flip phone with nothing. And then they were like, this phone from Nokia has a snake game in it. And now you have more and more advanced things. So software seems like it will always stay ahead of hardware. So that makes a lot of sense to me, because I just see that one of the big questions they get asked a lot is, which is the best model? And I always say, don't look at the charts. Here's what I can tell you. There are certain models I don't like.
Yeah.
I don't like GPT-01. I think it's sassy. The way it talks to me, I still use 4.0 almost exclusively.
Yeah.
And first thing is that they still update it all the time. They pushed a major update earlier this week because I had to reprogram a bunch of stuff that stopped working and update a bunch of things. So they're constantly pushing updates, even though they don't change the name and don't tell you. Things change all the time, but that doesn't mean that I'm right. There are plenty of people who hate 4.0 and love 01, or they love Anthropic, and they say that all these charts, it doesn't matter. I've never asked an LSAT question. And one of the other tests they do, they ask these questions like, how many W's in the word strawberry, or how many R's in the word strawberry, or how many words are in your answer. And there's these tricky questions that you do ask to see how good is different tasks, but then what you're using it for is what's important. And everyone uses AIs differently. So whatever model is right for you, that's really okay. There's no wrong answer for that. And I very rarely find that two people like the same model for the same reasons.
Yeah.
So I think that we're going to,
if I can maybe give you my perspective over the past, I would say, I don't know, John, 6 months. I think I have significantly moved across, because just being an AI person or a digital person, you're a critic and you're cynical because you don't know how good this particular technology has gotten to, or whether it's really, if it does what it's advertised on the box, if you will. And I think I have significantly moved across the spectrum of really adopting something like a ChatGPT. Again, there's no favoritism here. Just something like a ChatGPT as almost like a full-time digital assistant. As a matter of fact, with my business now, because I do consulting and career coaching, I think that number is doubling. Like the people in my team that use it, like it's a requirement for me that you have your own digital assistant. And all of a sudden, we are 2x, 3x the power of, you have a team of 2 or 3 people, and they're acting like a team of 10. And the reason that I've come across is the fact, with proper prompt engineering, with the proper way of prompting and priming and putting custom instructions for the chatbot, your ability to get things done is just amplified, significant. And you get to a point where you have these custom chatbots that different ones do different things. And now with the advent of being able to connect them to do, again, the agentic model, they can do multiple things for you. It becomes an indispensable tool. And because if you look at what I do, I've got 3 things running in parallel. I do consulting work, a company out here in Raleigh called Vaco, as well as for my own business, the consulting lab. I do coaching, and then I do coaching for startups and founders, and I look at help like with fundraise. I did 4 startups in the past. I'm on my 5th startup. So I can bring some of that perspective. And honestly, without having some custom built chatbots, or let's say large language models, whatever your Grok, Gemini, ChatGPT, whatever it is that you like, Copilot, without those, I would not be able to get the work done that I need to get done in a day. It's impossible. So it's just been a transformative journey for me personally to start seeing the power that we get with this. And to your listeners, if you guys are not using this technology, this is not self-serving. I have no trying to get a commission or anything. But if you guys don't start using these large language models, find your favorite and start really using it and exploiting it to your benefit, you're going to be left in the dust, my friend. In I would say less than 2 years. The person that's going to be getting the job, getting the funding, getting the money, whatever shape or form, is going to be somebody that is backed with an army of chatbots. And the person that's going to lose out is the person that's just keeping all that technology at an arm's length, because you simply cannot compete. You will not be able to compete, Jonathan, if you're a blog writer. Now, there's good and bad. So let's just set that aside about the content. I could crank out 100 blogs in the next hour. Now, you can argue the quality of the blog. So that's where we say, all right, you need somewhere in the middle. You got to be able to check the content, etc. The amount of time that it used to write a post in the past, like on LinkedIn or whatever, it used to take me half a day. Right? Now I direct the bot and I give it my tone of voice to say, here are my writing samples, the ones that I wrote. Make sure, and I create a custom bot that says, you are going to use this style. And then I do prompt priming so that it's not sounding like everybody else and it sounds like me. Then I get the piece that I want and I review it. And I amend it. I change it as I see fit. But then that's done in 10% of the time. So how can you compete with that? So it's very important for people to start ramping up. This is not a nice to have anymore. Now, again, I'm on the fringes of AI and we're pushing the envelope. Some people could argue that this is not really the case, but I really believe it is.
No, I think you're exactly right. And that's really the theme of this podcast, is why the AI transition, it's happening. It's no longer if it's happening, it's just a question of how fast.
Yeah, your podcast is spot on. And we need to have these deeper conversations. And I think you're doing that. And thanks for your show. We need to have these deeper conversations about how do we deal with this? We've not dealt with this in the past, right? So more and more of these deeper conversations and engaging conversations, and not just staying at the headline level, but going down into the details to say, how does this affect me on a day-to-day basis? And this is what we need to sort out.
I think you're exactly right. For people who want to build a consulting company or see what you're talking about, see what you're writing on LinkedIn, where's the best places to find you online?
Excuse me, it's Ken, and you can reach us on theconsultinglab.us, all one word, theconsultinglab.us. We're a startup, we're a services company. We're a very small team, but we do, digital transformation, AI consultancy, assessment strategies, etc., as well as career coaching for business leaders that want to reach the C-suite, figure out how to use AI, or C-suite members that want to reach the board level, like just general coaching, as well as for technical users. I come from a very deep technical background, as I told you, and I've crossed over to the dark side, the business side, 15 years ago. So I know both sides of the fence, and I can help technical leaders become more business adept at being able to speak business and relate to business so that their ideas are not so alien when they meet with business people. But that's where they can find me. More than happy to talk to anyone.
Amazing. I'll put links to those in the show notes and below the video. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you for your time.
of the Artificial Intelligence Podcast. Bye, everyone.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Artificial Intelligence Podcast. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss another episode. We'll be back next Monday with more tips and strategies on how to leverage AI to grow your business and achieve better results. In the meantime, if you're curious about how AI can boost your business's revenue, head over to artificialintelligencepod.com/calculator. Use our AI revenue calculator to discover the potential impact AI can have on your bottom line. It's quick, easy, and might just change the way you think about your business. While you're there, catch up on past episodes, leave a review, and check out our socials. If you enjoyed this episode, I've got 2 more that I think you're going to love. Click one of these videos to dive into more awesome content, and don't forget to subscribe for even more insights on using AI to grow your business. And I'll see you in the next one.